Hi, I'm Nafisa Nazir.
And I'm Leah Horick.
And we are Sustainability Ambassadors at Southwestern University. We created this podcast to help make our campus more sustainable.
And our world too.
So tune in every other Friday to hear more about what's happening in sustainability at SU and to learn what you can do to live a more sustainable life.
So many things, guys.
Thanks for listening.
And stay sustainable.
Good morning, Southwestern, and thank you for joining us this morning. Today, we are taking a break from interviews and doing another deep dive like we did for the Green Burial and fast fashion episodes. Today's topic, plastic.
Though we're not interviewing anyone today, we do have a guest speaker. So we're joined by Sophia Potempa, who is a fellow sustainability ambassador. She is part of the grounds team, which I'm also on. And also like me, she is a senior environmental studies major.
Well, thank you guys for having me on and allowing me to be part of this conversation. I am by no means a plastic expert. However, I do say that I have a bit of experience working with some plastic. I'm part of the PLARN project here on campus, and it's kind of a little informal recycling program, I'd say, where we take plastic bags, just the simple ones you receive at the grocery store, and you upcycle them. You turn them into PLARN, which for those who don't know what that is, it's plastic yarn, and then you can crochet, knit, turn them into more recycled, upcycled items.
Yes.
And that's why I'm here.
Our apartment has turned into a PLARN cottage industry.
That's so cute.
Yes, but it's super awesome. So yeah, that Sophia's work with PLARN inspired this episode. So thank you, Sophia.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into it.
Yeah, so now I'm pretty sure everybody knows that plastic is bad for the environment, but let's break down exactly why.
Yes, like plastic will never break down. All right, that was a terrible joke, I'm sorry. All right, so background. Plastic, as we know, was only invented about 100 years ago, which is kind of crazy to think because it's just so integral in our lives now.
Yeah.
And it wasn't widely used until Tupperware was invented in the 40s, which is also kind of crazy because I always like make fun of like the Tupperware party trope where you have these like ladies in 50s dresses and like huge hairdos, and you're like, you have to use this Tupperware, it's beautiful. It's like that was a thing. Like that's why it's a trope. But just a little bit of deeper backstory. The first synthetic polymer, which is what plastic is, was invented in 1869 by John Wesley Hyatt, and he was trying to make a material that would mimic ivory because ivory was in short supply because billiards, the game, was really popular and people were running out of ivory to make billiards balls. In 1907, Leo Baekeland invented Bakelite, which was the first fully synthetic plastic. So it had no molecules that were found in nature. And it was like a miracle substance. People were crazy about it. They made it everything because you could just mold it into whatever the hell you wanted. Yeah. And then during World War II, that is when plastic production really ramped up in the United States because they used it for everything from like they used pieces of it in guns and things like that. And since resources were scarce because of war, it was seen as more patriotic to use plastic. So moving on to today, over the last 10 years, we have produced more plastic than the whole of the last century since plastic was first developed, which is a lot. Yeah. Just to shoot off some plastic facts here, 10 million tons of plastic enter the ocean each year. And I'm sure most of you have heard the fact that the ocean will have more plastic in it than fish by weight by 2050.
Oh God.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I did not know that.
Really?
Wow.
I feel like that's everywhere. Actually, I have a cartoon on our fridge, Sophia, that has it on it. Oh no, it's not on the fridge. Never mind. But I do have a cartoon of it. It's a BC comic because BC is great. And okay, more plastic facts. So about 40% of plastics are used for packaging. So things that are intended to kind of be single use. More than 40% of plastic is used once and then thrown away. So there's some overlap in those categories. And then less than 9% of plastic gets recycled or has been recycled in the past, century. So that is a lot of plastic. And I think it's important to emphasize that like plastic has really helped humanity advance in a lot of ways. So it's like
Yeah.
it lifted a lot of people out of poverty, and it allowed us to make some like technological advances that we wouldn't have otherwise. But it's a double-edged sword if there ever was one. I
Right.
mean, I was watching this video about plastic, and it was kind of comparing it to the myth of King Midas, where he wishes that everything he touched could turn to gold, but then everything turns to gold. So it's kind of like that. It's like we made this really like amazing material that helps us in all these ways, but now it's everywhere and we can't control it.
I know, and I'll move on to some of the impacts now. And thank you, Leah, for providing that backstory. But I think many of us know, but plastics give off greenhouse gases like methane, ethylene, throughout their life, especially once they're burned in incinerators, and that contributes to greenhouse gases and climate change. And interestingly enough, plastic also contributes to antibiotic resistance, which I did not know before this episode, because
Wow.
it provides more surfaces for them to grow on. In the instance of like marine plastic, we have these huge floating islands out in the Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, and they almost act as another land sphere in the way that it's just a complete surface covering, and it allows basically bacteria to grow on that.
Another thing, you think plastics couldn't get worse, but then they do,
They somehow do.
like the two big there's a lot of bad things happening, but two of the big bad things like plastic pollution and antibiotic resistance, this is where they intersect.
In the worst possible way.
Mm-hmm.
Nanoparticles of plastic can also pass through cell membranes and accumulate inside animals, which we in turn consume and will accumulate within us as well.
Mm-hmm.
And several chemicals used in the production of plastic materials are carcinogenic, although I don't think this comes as a surprise to many of us.
Mm-hmm.
These interfere with the body's endocrine system, causing developmental, reproductive, neurological, and immune disorders in humans and in wildlife. So even though we think that we can avoid plastics to a certain extent, they are well within our bloodstreams.
Yeah, I read somewhere that like 9 out of 10 no, I think it was 10 out of 10 adults have plastic in their bodies in measurable amounts. Like everybody, like unless you live like on the moon or something, you have, and you probably have it there too, because how'd you get there? You get there in a rocket made of plastic. But I digress.
Also, there's this interesting dichotomy between keeping plastics within the States and how we also contribute to global plastic waste by the fact that we ship a lot of our plastic overseas to developing nations in Asian countries largely, where they get to deal with our problems. So sometimes we think that we're devoid of it. Like we'll see the occasional bag on the side of the road and the plastic bottles, but largely a lot of our plastic waste, we don't even, once it leaves our hand, we never see it again. And then we see like the littered beaches in the Philippines and nations like those. And that's where our plastic ends up going.
Yeah.
So plastic is actually a blanket term for a lot of things, and it makes it hard to recycle plastic because when you mix different types of plastics, they can contaminate the whole batch of recycling.
There are different classes of plastics. Everybody knows, of course, like the 1 through 7, all the numbers on the bottom. So fun fact, those numbers are not required, and they're really there mostly for people in the industry to tell the plastics apart, not for consumers. But so there's two main classes of plastics that we use. There's thermoplastics and thermosets. Thermoplastics are more easily recyclable because the bonds in them are not as strong, so they can be broken and reformed. Whereas in thermosets, the bonds are super strong. So if you try to heat them up enough to recycle them, you actually destroy the plastic itself in the process. And thermosets are things like industrial machinery and toilet seats and things like that. So even before, like in production, some plastic is just automatically out of the recycling stream because it can't be recycled, at least with our current technology.
So plastic recycling is in a crisis because China stopped importing foreign waste. So now US recyclers are just hoarding all the plastic until they can sell it again. And a lot is just getting thrown away anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, and like even before the ban was put in place, like a lot of the plastic waste that we export overseas to be recycled ends up getting thrown away
Mhm.
anyway in other countries' landfills. And that just impacts the people there. I know Sienna, another sustainability ambassador, made this really awesome infographic last semester, and it was showing what percentage of the US's recycling exports go to to different countries, and then of the percentage that goes to that country, how much is actually recycled and how much is just going to a landfill.
Wow.
So there's really not a lot of positive things to talk about with
Yeah.
plastic.
Yes.
But I guess plastic does reduce food waste, which is good.
Yeah.
But it's also there was a quote that I read a few years ago that I thought was really good. I don't remember who said it, but it was on some recycling website, and it was that it makes absolutely no sense to encase something as ephemeral as food in something as durable as plastic, because the food goes away really quickly, but the plastic stays forever.
Yeah.
Should be a tattoo somewhere.
Yeah, I don't completely. I mean, like I do agree, but also like I said, like plastic has allowed us to prevent a lot of food waste and like feed more people. Though that again, like more people is bad for the planet. So it's like, there's no winning in any direction.
Nope.
Yeah, but Sophia, I wanted to ask you, how long have you been making Plarn, and like when did you find out about it?
So I think I've been a crafter all my life. For as long as I can remember, I've always been doing something with my hands, and usually this is knitting or crocheting projects. But I think I got introduced to Plarn in 4th grade in a workshop. This woman came to teach us about upcycling, and she opened my world up to being able to use plastic bags. And I don't know if you guys are like this, but my family hoards plastic bags under their
Oh
sink
yeah.
and in the pantry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we probably had like 5 years of bags saved up. And I just ran home that day and I just got out the kitchen scissors and I set about to making like the biggest bag I could think of. And kind of took off since then. I have not had as much time on my hands to do this because now I'm a college student. But this year I've restarted it a bit, and I'm almost done with a bag that's about the regular size of a tote bag. And I think I've used roughly 60 bags just in the production of the one bag.
Wow.
So it is a plastic guzzler, I'll tell you.
Wow.
You can really get through your plastic bag storage this way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a definitely like a individual solution, and then like on the broader scale, a lot of different solutions have been thrown around for the plastic waste problem. So like one big one would be investing in waste and recycling infrastructure in developing countries, because 90% of the plastic that enters the oceans through rivers comes from 10 rivers in Asia and Africa. And that's because, not because those countries are like evil or anything, but because they developed at a relatively quick pace, and their waste infrastructure just couldn't keep up. So a lot of the plastics that were entering the country didn't have anywhere to go. I mean, not that any plastic really has anywhere to go, let's be honest, but they didn't have landfills and they didn't have recycling centers. So a lot of it just got dumped into rivers and in the ocean. So that is one way to reduce marine plastic, but that doesn't reduce the problem itself. But then I guess the biggest solution would just be to move away from single-use plastic. Like we're never like until we die out as a species, we're probably not gonna like just stop using plastic because it is so valuable and useful. But like if we could just use it for the things that matter and not like coffee cups and grocery bags.
I'd like to actually bring up a topic, and I'd like to hear your two sides of the story on this. But given our current COVID situation, what do you think plastic's role is in sanitation and the prioritization of, I guess, in the medical field especially? So many
Mhm.
plastics get used in the
Yeah.
production of keeping things sterile.
Mhm.
And, sterile is the name of the game these days. So
Mhm.
what do you guys have to say about that?
Nafisa, you wanna take that?
Well, so I'm guessing what you're asking is like, is there like, um, like, is it just like an issue where there's really like no winning solution because, we can't use plastic a lot and yet we kind of have to because of COVID protocols? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, to
Okay.
an extent. Hmm.
Um, it's actually, I mean, it's really tricky because my mom is actually an ER physician, and so like she's very like well versed with this stuff, and she even tells me that like she wants to be more environmentally conscious, and yet she also doesn't want us to like she also thinks it's important that the patients don't get sick because it was in the beginning, I remember it was like a very very like contagious virus, and
Mhm.
it's just finding that balance between like what do you value more, given the current situation. Like if there's a lot of people dying, do you really need to focus on the amount of plastic that's already been accumulating for the past 10 years, or do you need to focus on the issue at hand, which is a lot of people are dying. This is a new virus, we haven't gone through this
Mhm.
before. So I guess it's really just a matter of prioritization and just analyzing the issue at hand, really. And like, even though both of those issues are important, it's just like, making that decision of what you need to focus on first.
Mhm. I think with the medical
Absolutely.
question is definitely the trickier one. I think when it comes to like fast food and things like that in COVID, I'm a little less sympathetic because
Hmm.
from everything I've read, touch transmission is really not a big deal, or like you're not like eating food that someone sneezed on like is probably not going to give you COVID. So though, but there is still like the issue of like you can't sit in the restaurant to eat something. So you have to get takeout. Though I do wish we could have more acceptance of reusable containers that you could just like bring in and have them fill up and then take back. But yeah, I mean, like Nafisa said, it's tricky. There's so many trade-offs,
Right.
and usually it's just like the urgency of it puts like the need for reducing the plastic on the back burner.
Absolutely. The quantifiable human lives that we know can be saved by using the best safety techniques and practices versus,
Mhm.
trying to preserve the amount of plastics we do let enter our landfill.
Mm-hmm.
It's a complex.
Well, this episode has been a little depressing, but all of our episodes are a little depressing.
Yes.
Well, we hope that we have educated you some on the background of plastics and why they are such a problem. Though we don't have any earth-shattering solutions to present to you on this small college podcast, but we're trying.
Right.
So I was watching a video earlier, and it was about science because that's cool, and and I learned that scientists are trying to engineer plants so they can fertilize themselves, which is so
Oh.
cool. Like it's all theoretical at this point, but
Mhm.
like it would be awesome because then that would be a huge reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from fertilizer production. So that's my fun fact of the day.
That's awesome. I
Okay,
love that.
what other news do we have?
So this whole month of April, us sustainability ambassadors will be quite busy since it is Earth Month. Well, every month is Earth
Yay.
Month, but this one
This
is
is the
definitely
official
Earth
one.
Month. Yeah. So lots of events are happening, so you should stay on the lookout for details. So here's some events that we can name right now. The food team is doing a Kiss the Earth watch party on Thursday, April 15th. And grounds team is doing a nature walk on Friday, April 16th. And then there's going to be a Georgetown Green Film Series 2040. There will be a screening and panel for that. And then on April 30th, there will be a Texas Arbor Day tree plantings. And then us energy teams, and actually energy team and waste team are actually potentially doing a combined event, but we're not finalized on those details yet. But
Mhm.
I will say that the energy team will be doing a fun energy trivia Kahoot
Mhm.
night, and we'll be giving out sustainable prizes. So Yeah.
Ooh, that sounds awesome.
I'll have to be on the lookout for that.
Yes.
All about those prizes, especially if they're sustainable.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank everybody for listening, and I hope you all have a good Easter or just a weekend if you don't celebrate Easter.
Yes.
Just a good spring weekend.